Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Oh, that's a notorious thing.
That's common.
That's a corrupt, yeah. Was it Baltimore where the mayor was back used government funds to, she had the school system purchase a book that she wrote?
I think so.
Yeah, she wrote a movie. Yeah, she got trouble for that. Because it's self-dealing. Yeah, you can't do that. Was it COVID money? It's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the question. Yeah.
So we just delivered a CD of 14. It's until you can.
Hey, Ray, how big is the wait list for storage at the fairgrounds?
How much is what?
How big is the wait list? You know?
Oh, how big is the wait list for
Yeah.
storage? I don't know, I would probably say probably 5 to 10 people probably on the wait list.
Okay, so what's the turnover? I mean, does it tend to be that if you, do the people on the wait list tend to get in?
We've added a couple people this year that were on the wait list.
Okay.
So every year, just people move up and up and up, so,
May as well get myself on the wait list now.
yeah, it's a good spot for it.
And you have more likelihood if you have something smaller. I'm getting a car that I don't spend my year round because I don't have
They didn't know
garage
what you were
space
talking
for it. I have
about.
garage space for one car. So since it's kind of a summer car, that's what I was thinking. So does that tend to make a difference, or is it that most people want to store boats, or most people want to store cars?
People store RVs, campers, boats.
The camper must take up a whole hell of a lot.
That's right.
Yeah, if you call up there, they'll be able to.
Okay, so if I put myself on the wait list now, then I decide not to do it, they're not gonna, you know.
They'll call you.
They're not gonna hold it to us.
They'll just call you.
They'll burn my house down, yeah. All right. Thanks, Ray, thanks, Bruce. You have what, your camper in there?
No, I was on the list, got called, and I already had somewhere else.
Did you sell it? No, you sold it.
Yeah, I don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I thought so.
Pastor Prince, would you like to lead us in brief prayer? No one should be compelled to join in prayer if they don't want to.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance and wisdom, support during this council meeting. I pray, Lord, that you'll help everyone engage in meaningful discussion and that everyone will be allowed to have their opinion without any meanness, just kind of sharing from their hearts and their minds in a way that's kind, but also in a way that gives you glory. I'm thankful, Lord, for this group of men and ladies and all that are here today. Would you bless them, keep them, cause your face to shine upon all of them as they represent our community that we love so very much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Call this meeting to order. You guys remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome all of our friends and neighbors and colleagues in joining us in this regularly scheduled, well, it's not regularly scheduled because it's a Tuesday, but it is on our schedule for this year, January 18th, 2022 City Council meeting. As you come in to my right, what would be to your left, there's a desk, a sign-in sheet. If you're a guest with us tonight, please sign your name. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilman Soha?
Present.
Reiner?
Here.
Here. Morrissey?
Here.
Sharp?
Here.
Stuchel?
Here.
Pratt? Here. Sizer?
Here.
And Mayor Stockford.
Here.
At 8 present here.
Thank you, Katie. We will move on to approval agenda. Is there any changes, City Manager, or any member of council would like to make to the agenda tonight?
Mayor, I do have one item that you have in front of you.
Yes, sir.
It is a purchase agreement for land in the industrial park. We could add that under new business for council to consider.
Yeah, we're definitely adding that. Councilman Stucci?
Yes, we had a TIF meeting today, we have a communication or a letter we'd like to share with council, we can talk about either on new business or underneath appointments.
Is it regarding appointments?
Yes.
Can we just do it at the appointment time then?
Yeah, but I would, I just want to share what it came out of TIF board.
Absolutely.
With that packet.
Yeah, before we make the appointment then.
All right, we'll pass this out.
Yeah, absolutely,
All right.
absolutely. Make sure the clerk gets one so it goes into the record.
All right, got it.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
So I've got new business, item F, which we will call, industrial park purchase agreement. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda with item F under new business?
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Do I have a motion to approve the new agenda?
So moved.
Wait. With
Second.
Greg's addition as well?
Yeah,
Do you want that
But
aligned?
I just want, it's gonna be in the packet.
so it'll be in the minutes,
Okay.
and they'll have opportunity to read it during the appointment period, but we don't need to do an amendment to the agenda, because the appointment's already on the agenda. So it's just business that has to do with the appointment.
Absolutely, okay. Makes sense.
So I've got a motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt to approve the agenda. May I please have a roll call vote?
Councilperson Reiner.
Yes.
Morrissey.
Yes.
Sharp.
Yes.
Stuchel.
Yes.
Pratt. Yes. Sizer.
Yes.
Mayor Sockford.
Yes.
Councilperson Soha.
Yes.
8-0 approved.
Thank you, Katie. Moving to public comment on agenda items only. During this time, the podium will be open. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. And please ensure whatever you're speaking on has a direct tie to something that's present on the agenda tonight. Podium is now open.
Good evening, my name is Mary Wolfram. I live at 3 Corona Court in Hillsdale. And I want to speak on the appointment of Doug Engels to TIFA. But honestly, it's really not about Doug personally. I like Doug to the degree that I know him and have worked with him in the past and watched what he's doing on county commission. It seems reasonable. It's not about the fact that he is Adam's stepfather. What I want you to know is something that wasn't included in the packet, which is this is not an appointment to an open seat on TIFA, which is usually how appointments are done. This is a seat that is currently being occupied by me, that I've been told I'm not going to be reappointed to TIFA. And I just wanted you to know that, and I want you to make a informed decision about who you're appointing, and if you think one person is better for the city of Hillsdale than the other, then certainly you should make that appointment. I feel like I've been a loyal and productive member of TIFA, and that I'm kind of being removed without cause, if you will. If it was an employment contract, you would kind of see it that way. So I guess when it gets to that point in the agenda, I would appreciate if someone could ask the mayor why he's not appointing me. He has told me he wants to appoint generally people that are property owners in the TIFA district, but of course Doug is not a property owner in the TIFA district. And his recent appointments have not necessarily been owners in the TIFA district. For instance, Mary Margaret Spiteri was appointed recently. She is not a property owner or a business person in the TIFA district. And her husband's business, it's not a matter of her husband, that handmade is not in the TIFA district. So just wanted to point out a few things that maybe could be discussed when we get to this point on the agenda. There was a resolution, and Councilperson Stuchel's going to speak to this. We had a TIFA meeting coincidentally this morning, and I think you should know that there was a pretty strong consensus by the TIFA board, the current TIFA board, that I should be reappointed. And they had concerns about appointing a county commissioner to TIFA. That's really not what I'm here to speak about. I'm here to just speak about the normal process. I started working for the city and being on city council in 2011. I have never heard of a volunteer that was willing to serve another term not be reappointed to a board or commission. I've never heard of that happening. So, and I've asked a couple other people, it's not because I have a bad memory. It's because the norm is just to allow people to serve if they're willing to serve and they're doing a good job. And I feel like that is my position. I think what I would like to ask of you as council to note the support that I have on TIFA. Greg is on TIFA and supports my reappointment. We have 2 TIFA members here that support my reappointment. And perhaps you should table this vote because I think that there's some questions that surround it. And I think that would be the smart thing to do until you sort through some of these issues and find out why the mayor is not reappointing me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any more public comment?
Jack McLean. I think everybody that takes a board or a committee understands the rules, which you can only be there so long and then you're replaced. I can tell you one person that this happened to, and I know nobody else remembers it, but Mr. Laycock, which is on the planning commission, served his term, had to get off the planning commission. Alan said that there's no real thing set in stone. Mr. Alcott was off for, or Laycock was off for like 6 weeks, and then he magically reappeared on the planning commission, which I guess is the time between being on for 6 years and then having to get off and then just wait a few days and get back on. I'm not sure why nobody remembers that, because they definitely should. I mean, you guys are the ones that voted to put him back on. You had to approve him. To me, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I brought this up before. I don't think if you're on a committee that you should be able to vote for another group that you're also on, which is a nonprofit or whatever, which is the Friends of the Dawn Theater of Hillsdale, Michigan. You know, stuff gets directed to them through the governance board by these people. And I think that's like a conflict of interest. I mean, why should they be the only ones that get the benefit of kind of controlling the Dawn Theater if the governance board doesn't want to? And just because, say I'm on the governance board, that doesn't give me the right to vote, you know, that way. And it's the same way with council. I mean, there's people here that vote on the TIFA board that have relation on these family relation on these nonprofits, and then come in here and vote for the same thing. Dr. Morrissey can't vote twice on the same thing, which is only the way it should be. And I don't think the rules, just because they haven't happened in the last day or two, that they shouldn't be the rules. Our forefathers set those rules long before any of us was here, and what's the reason for changing them? I mean, that's how I see it. Speaking of people not being in the TIFA district, people that are wanting to be appointed are not in the TIFA district. They have nothing to do with the TIFA district. You know, it's just they don't live in the TIFA district, they don't own a business in the TIFA district. I know people say they work for the city, but I was under the understanding they work for the Hillsdale Policy Group, not the city, which they also have nothing to do with the Hillsdale Policy Group. They're not on the board. They're not the president, they're not the vice president, they're not the treasurer, and they're not the secretary. They've told me they are, but there's nowhere in the LARA that shows that they've ever been on the board. Since, I think, can't remember if it went back to 97 or back to 06 is when that policy group went in effect. So I don't understand why things should change for one person. And the only person that's got an application in for this position is Mr. Ingalls. And I thought in order to get a position, you had to file a application, but it was said today that if you're on there, you don't have to refile that you're interested. Which, then why should anybody else have to file? You ought to be able to just say, hey, I want to be on there and put me in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Any more public comment?
Penny Swan, Ward 4. I'm all for term limits across the board at everything. I think new blood is a great thing. Commissioner Ingalls, I've watched him at the county commissioners. He's been very good about watching the money, voting constitutional. I'm not happy with Tifa. I'm not happy with all the millions of dollars that have gone to the Dawn and the millions of dollars that have gone to the Kiefer. The Kiefer, there's been no work since before Thanksgiving. It's open, people are getting in there, going up there and taking pictures. You can climb the scaffolding, you can get through the fence, and there's an open hole in the wall. It's been a travesty from day one, and we know who has been in charge of that. So I am very much for Commissioner Ingalls' appointment. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Any more public comment?
Yes, I'm Margaret Bragan. I'm on the TIFA board, and I just want to say a few words about Mary Wolfram. I've known her for over 20 years. She's the most diligent, hardworking person I know. She has started with the Dawn Theater and the Kiefer House from the get-go, and I don't think we need to change anybody in the middle of it until everything is completed, and that's the Kiefer House as well. So I support Mary Wolfram.
Thank you, Margaret. Any more public comment? Seeing no more public comment, we will close podium. We'll move into the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we've got approval of bills, city and BPU claims December 22nd and January 6th. Payroll of December 22nd and January 6th. City council minutes of December 20th. Operation and governance minutes of August 26th and October 14th. Finance minutes of November 15th, November 29th, and December 13th. Board of Review minutes of December 14th. LAC minutes of January 12th, and our 2021 annual code enforcement report. Any conversation on any item in consent agenda or questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Stuchel, to approve the consent agenda, and I don't see any money being spent in there, except for our claims. Can I have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Sure. Councilperson Morrissey?
Yes.
Sharp?
Yes.
Stuchel?
Yes.
Pratt?
Yes.
Sizer?
Yes.
Mayor Stockford?
Yes.
Councilperson Soha?
Yes.
And Reiner.
Yes.
At 8-0, please.
Thank you, Katie. And we've got one item in communications petitions, which is the Mitchell Research Center December 2021 newsletter. So that's present in there for council members and the public to see.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the goals we're gonna talk about the Mitchell Research Center going forward this year.
Yeah.
I just want, this is just a small glimpse of the history that's housed there. And I just want to voice with concern that we need to be conscious of how we're gonna protect that material.
Yeah.
Okay, I just, it's our family heirloom for the county, so I just think we just constantly gotta keep that going.
I agree with you, and I think, I think that making it a goal was a good idea, and we'll focus energies on it, and I think that definitely the consensus coming from council is that history and heritage is very important to us and to the residents, so.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. Any more discussion on communications petitions? Okay. We've got no introduction and adoption of ordinances, public hearings, so we'll move into our council 2022 goals. Got 5 goals that I wrote down this year. Some were the purpose, some were consensus, of council. Some were Mr. Mackey and I working together. Some were, there's one on here that's just something I put on there because it's just a gift wish of mine. So, first thing I've got is streets. So when I took office 4 years ago, our number of streets in good condition were 2%. 2 years ago, 2020, our number of streets in Hillsdale, and this is per the PACER rating, our number of streets in good condition was 20%. With our projects that we've got on the table this year, by the end of the year, we'll be at over the 30% mark of streets in condition, streets that are in good condition in the city of Hillsdale, and I just can't overstate what it's going to mean to surpass that mark. We've got plans in front of us to have all the streets fixed in Hillsdale within a 5 to 10 year period, and who would have thought that 4 years ago? It speaks for itself, and it's a direct result of this council making streets our number one goal. And also the hard work of Dave, and of Kristen, and of Jake, and of Department of Public Services, and the Board of Public Utilities. So the people of Hillsdale elected us to fix their streets. They've approved millages, we've approved millages, we've applied and received grants, we've gotten serious, we've hired a city engineer, we've instituted a variety of funding options, which we were never gonna get this done just one way, guys, and we knew that. So, once again, streets are our number one goal, and if they weren't, I would not consider us an effective council. Number 2, sound system in council. Thank you, Councilman Sharp.
You bet.
But Bruce is right, this is 2022. We've been focused on the basic needs of the city, as in streets, police, fire, electric, water, and all the while, myself, and I'm sure Bruce, and I'm sure the rest of us have received dozens of complaints over and over of people regarding that they can't hear what we're saying up here, and they can't hear the decisions that we're making. So it's a simple thing, we should be able to fix it simply enough, and this is directly related to constituent services, and our communication with the residents is important, so let's get this done this year. Number 3, the Mitchell Building. So years ago, when this was originally brought into the fold of city services, we were told that it was going to be a big boon to our downtown, that people were going to come from everywhere to use it, and it was going to be an economic development driver. It just hasn't panned out that way. That being said, it's a lovely addition to our community, and there's no way that I could express the level of appreciation that we have for those who volunteered their time there. But ultimately, it doesn't generate revenue, and it ends up in the red every single year. So as Councilman Stuchel has stated, it's a community treasure. All of us here probably have memories of the Mitchell Building, whether it's using it now or when it was a library or taking our children there or going on a field trip there. I know I have memories of it. So it's very, very apparent that this community takes history very seriously. It's something that we're proud of, and I think that the respect for our heritage is one of the reasons that this city is so close-knit. And I think it's one of the reasons that the city stood the test of time as an old railroad town and not disintegrated when the railroad disintegrated like so many old other railroad towns. So no doubt, it has turned into a bit of a financial burden, and we've talked about it several times, and it's well past time that we look at what we can do to alleviate that. We don't know what that means, but I do know that council and the administration can come up with something if we focus our efforts on it. That also simultaneously saves us money. But also, as Councilman Stuchel expressed, honors our history and heritage. So we can meet somewhere in the middle of it. And if we can get out of the red with it and even break even with it, it would be a success. So, number 4, I added this myself, school resource officer. Now this is just in its infancy, although I have had some brief conversations and interactions with Dave. I talked briefly with the chief, I sat down and met with the sheriff, with Sheriff Hotshire, and I have talked to some school administrators at this time. So did you guys all know that a kid took a knife to Hillsdale schools last week with the intention of stabbing another student? He got suspended. I just found out about this. Did you know that we recently arrested a resident for basically grooming and sexually preying on teenage girls who was also substitute teaching at our schools. That's another thing that happened. We're all also very well aware of the reactions of a couple students scribbling some threatening messages on bathroom walls. And I don't know if we play a hand in this at all, any sort of hand. I know in at least one of the scenarios that I just mentioned, I did play a hand in what ultimately ended up happening. But in all of those scenarios, I had residents and concerned parents reach out to me and say, what are we gonna do about this? And I don't have an answer to that. I know that our city police force handled all those situations with the utmost professionalism. I know they responded accordingly, I'm not trying to step on their toes. I trust the chief and I trust our officers to know better than any of us on how to handle these situations. Now there's 6 primary schools in Hillsdale. We've got a workforce development center, we've got the ISD, and we've got 3 higher education institutions, the college, Jackson College, and Hillsdale Beauty College. So it's far-fetched and it's unpractical to think that we're gonna be able to post an officer at every single one of these locations all day, every day, throughout the school year. Our dispatch via the city police force has around a 3-minute response time to 911 calls, which means anywhere in the city a 911 call's made, we've got an officer there within about 3 minutes, and that is incredible. But we can always do better on things. Maybe we can assign an officer or several officers to sporadically drop in during the school day so we can allude to having some sort of presence there. Maybe we already do that, I don't know. Maybe we have resources that we can share with the schools that we haven't totally taken advantage of. I found out last week that county dispatch already has a fully funded position, which is solely responsible for providing resources to the schools for these exact sort of situations where there's an active shooter or a threatening situation, and they haven't filled the position. So maybe we can just assist the county in filling the position, or maybe we can put pressure on them to fill the position. But whatever the case is, this is on my wish list. Our young families are the backbone of this community, our children are the future of this community, and investing resources in that is never a bad idea. And finally, thank you, Dave, but we didn't have this agreement on our table until tonight, but let's sell some of our let's sell some more of our land in the industrial park. We've got hundreds of acres. We are working with a local realtor who's an incredible go-getter. We've got the new Stoll development out there in the works, and so now is time to do some real economic development out in our industrial park. To me, that means letting the private market handle it, making it easy for them to succeed, and getting out of their way. So, 5 goals. Any discussion on those goals? Or do you guys want to move on? I know we've had lots of discussions on it, but anybody want to add anything? Councilor?
Just briefly on the road thing, the villages, just be stated that before the voters said we'll have the mills, it was always a 6-3 vote. We'll go that way, so there's certain council members that would not support it because of their party's affiliation, that they don't vote for tax increases.
Yep.
So I wanna be sure on that other people stood up and said, no, we want this done, and then the voters finally agreed with us to say, yes, we'll have a millage. So thank God for that, so we didn't have to have this going back and forth. And it is the #1 goal, is fixing the streets, and yet we have come a long way in 4 years. I mean, it was continued that way. But I just wanted to bring that up, that these goals are very good, what you got here. Definitely getting the PA system fixed in here would be the best thing. Do we have a date on that possibly in the next couple months? Soon?
This isn't going.
We'll make it one.
Yes, we're making it a goal, and we will, because it'll need to be in the next year's budget, so it will be, we could have it set up to start after the first of the new budget year, which is July.
July, everybody didn't hear that. It will be done. Trust me. I'm on my last term as a term limit. I'm gonna make sure that is one thing it will be taken care of.
Yeah.
Thank you. There, I made my outreach.
Thank you, Councilman Sharp. Dave, since Bruce brought it up, regarding the 3 mills, we still have to vote on that every year, correct?
The 3 mills are not part of the budget because we don't have 3 mills to.
We're maxed out on our
Yes.
mills.
We're maxed out with.
And then some.
With the millage that was approved.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be, there is not, and that was part of the information that we put out with that, is that, if you approve the road millage, there would not be additional 3 mills in town.
Very good. Any more discussion on our goals? We don't need to have a vote, but you guys wanna have a vote, just to get it on the record that these are our goals?
Damn straight.
All right, is that a motion?
That is the motion.
Bruce says damn straight's the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion by Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. We'll move into new business. Item A, culvert and bridge inspections. Kim's not, excuse me. Jake's here. Kristen's not here, excuse me.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I guess to follow up on that number one goal, assessing all of our culverts in town is a huge part of that. We need to know what kind of shape they're in. We need to know how that's gonna play into our street projects as we move through them. Like I say, there's, it says in here, there's 18 of them in town. We replaced 2 of them, the one on Fayette and the one on Ripon. The rest of them date somewhere around 1920-ish is when they were all built, I think part of a direction of council. My guess is they were wooden prior to that. So we need to get in there, see what kind of shape they're in, see if they need to be part of a road project as a full replacement, or if we can, you know, mill and pave over the top of them if they're still sound structures. Hate to tell you, but most of them probably are not. And then as part of this also, City Engineer Bauer mentions, should additional structural analysis be required, we'll also use Rowe for that also, as who we're recommending as the lowest bidder. City Engineer Bauer has quite a bit of experience with them, and qualifications wise, and their ability to complete this work timely. So we had no reservations there. And again, this is already in the budget, DPS budget. I think around $22,000 was budgeted for it. So we're looking at spending the $7,500 on the inspections, and then it still leaves us some money back if there's something that has an urgent need. We might have to reinforce something until the street project makes it there, that kind of thing. In some cases, we could end up with some load restrictions possibly on them, where no heavy trucks could drive on them, so we'd have to sign them as such. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what that's about.
Awesome, thank you, Jake. Any questions for Jake?
The one on by Atkins goes across the highway, is that the state's responsibility? So that's not included in this. Is there any way we can write up the state and get them to do something about that nightmare?
Probably not until they reconstruct the highway.
Okay.
Probably talking a decade out. It really probably should have been addressed to a larger extent. The last time they came through, I believe, was what, that section probably 08, 09,
Yeah, something like
09. It's a little bit undersized, as we all know. But until the highway's gonna come along, I don't think we'll probably probably won't attack that one. Part of that is ours though. The southern end of it, south of Spring Street, until it gets to the right of way of the state highway is ours.
Right.
But it is one continuous culvert section. So we probably have to save that one back and put it in play with them and do those together as more of a joint project. A couple of these are in parks, there's a couple on bike path, kind of over by WCSR, there's a couple over there. One at the wastewater treatment plant, Stocks Park, are pretty much scattered everywhere. But most of them are in the streets.
Any more questions for Jake? Comments? Thank you, Jake. Do I have a motion to award the inspection work to Rowe Professional Services in the amount of $7,520?
So moved.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Sharp,
Yes.
Stuchel,
Yes.
Pratt, yes, Sizer,
Yes.
Mayor Stockford,
Yes.
Councilperson Soha,
Yes.
Reiner,
Yes.
and Morrissey.
Yes.
8-0 approved.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move on to item B, 2022 guidelines for poverty tax exemption for property taxes. Oh, Kim is here tonight, okay. I'm sorry, Kim, I didn't see you. Kim and I talked about this a couple months ago. Kim had some creative changes to make to our guideline exemptions for some very interesting reasons. And I think she did a really good job on this. So there are some alternative guidelines that we haven't had in the past, and I'm sure Kim will spell out the reasons for that.
Yes, so with the poverty exemption guidelines, there are basically 3 sections to the policy that council has to make some decisions on how they want to provide guidance to the Board of Review in their decision-making. So the first is the income guidelines. That one's fairly simple. We just follow the federal poverty guideline on setting what those minimum limits, or the maximum income for the household size is. Because they're federal guidelines, those are based on nationwide averages, we can set our guidelines higher than what the federal uses. I don't think that's justified in Hillsdale. I don't see where cost of living in Hillsdale would be higher than our national average. I mean, if we were New York or someplace where it's very expensive to live, then you might want to look at maybe looking at what our local cost of living would be to determine those. But I think for Hillsdale, the federal poverty guidelines are a good starting point. The second part is an asset test. So we have to determine what is a reasonable amount of assets that a taxpayer can have on hand and still be eligible to not pay their taxes because of poverty, or to have a reduced tax bill because of poverty. And I had a supervisor at one of the townships I worked at that was a perfect example of why you need that asset test. On paper, he made about $14,000 a year and was raising a family. He had 2 kids and a wife. He had paid cash for his 80 acres with a 3,000 square foot house, built a pool, paid cash for that, built a mother-in-law suite in the pool house, paid cash for that. But on paper, his income was only $14,000. So you have to have some kind of a cap on how many and what the assets are that taxpayer can have on hand. Mainly, we're looking at how much cash do they have, what do they have in checking accounts, savings accounts, retirement accounts, because that's money that's available to pay the taxes directly. But we also look at what else do they own? How many vehicles do they own? Do they own other real estate that they could potentially sell to pay their taxes here? And then the third phase, in last year when the state changed the poverty exemption requirements, they added a section that said that we can grant exemptions at either a 25% discount, a 50% discount, or 100% exemption. So the third phase of the guidelines that I'm proposing would give council something to look at to determine where that cutoff should be for each percentage. And I based it on the assets, on the cash on hand. So I will let you take a look at the guidelines, or the resolution that I'm proposing. You can either pass it the way I'm proposing it, you can make changes to it tonight and pass an amended resolution. You can give me some recommendations to take back and rewrite it for your next meeting, or you can table it and we can discuss it at a later time.
Question.
Yes.
On the reduction calculation part, that's strictly based on cash on hand, not on assets.
Right, the total assets we're looking at to determine whether they qualify at all.
Okay.
But the cash on hand, savings accounts, checking accounts, money that's readily available to pay the taxes is what we're using to determine that 25, 50, or 100%.
I guess it's the asset one. I mean, so we determine that you don't need that car, you don't need that swimming pool. I mean,
So what I'm proposing is a reasonable, for each working adult in the household, they're allowed 1 vehicle. Because we are Hillsdale and we have public transit, but it's not readily available for somebody that needs to work evenings or weekends, you know. So it seems reasonable that they would be allowed a car. We're limiting the value of the cars to a certain level before we count it as being available to potentially pay taxes.
I have one last question.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Is there is there a limit or a maximum that the property they own can be? I mean, let's just say my rich uncle just gave me his farm and ranch and everything, and I make $14,000 a year.
So the house itself and the immediate footprint of the house cannot be considered. But if there is, say like you said, it's an 80-acre farm, you can consider that other 79 acres is available for sale.
So the house and the lot is untouchable.
Right.
So if I inherit this beautiful mansion from my rich uncle, and I make $14,000 a year, okay.
I'm not sure how you're gonna heat that mansion on $14,000 a year, but yes.
You did really good work on this, Kim. And what we've seen with this is that the people that really need it aren't even aware that it exists and don't take advantage of it. And the people that make a lot of money and have smart accountants are the ones that figure out ways to take advantage of this. And I think that is so unfortunate because I'm all for people finding ways not to pay taxes, but it is irritating when people find ways not to pay taxes and then everybody else has to carry the burden for them. So I had years where it was rough for me to pay my house taxes, definitely. And but I didn't qualify for this. I just made a little bit too much, and you know, doesn't mean it wasn't tough, but I appreciate you really looking at this, and hopefully we can get good at getting the information out there for the people that do need
Right.
to take advantage of it, because we don't want to. There are legitimately people that, you know, that I don't think should lose their houses because they've had a rough year and can't make the taxes that year.
Right.
So there's a reason that this exists, but just like every other part of the tax code in the United States. Anyways, good job. Thank you. Councilman
Mr.
Silver.
Mayor, okay, just to clarify, any of the invasive requests for personal information is only if they're applying for this.
Correct, they only have, yeah, we only ask them that information if they express an interest in applying. So, yeah, we have to have the guidelines available to them so they can see what those guidelines are before they ever submit information to us.
Of course. We don't want to know what's in people's bank accounts.
Just one minute.
But if you come and say, I can't pay my taxes, then
Right.
prove it. Any more discussion? Do I have a motion to accept the new amended exemptions for property taxes due to poverty?
So moved.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Stuchel, seconded by Councilman Soha. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Kim.
Do you have a resolution number, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
3485.
3485.
Correct, yes.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we will move to item C, resolution to revoke industrial facilities tax exemption certificate for GAMCO. That's unfortunate. Kim?
So our office just recently was notified by GAMCO that they're no longer operating at the facility at 266 Industrial Drive. So because they have two current IFTs, if they're no longer operating, then the city needs to revoke those IFTs. If a new company comes in and takes their place at that location, then they can request to have it transferred into their name and reinstate it.
Okay, so we're losing the Cardinal Group, or we lost the Cardinal Group, huh? That's unfortunate.
Looks that way.
Not that they had a lot of employees, but that's a lovely facility.
Mhm.
Okay, that's unfortunate. Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the resolution revoking industrial facilities exemption certificate numbers 2012, 298, 2014, 489?
So moved.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Soha. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Resolution 3486.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, hopefully we can get that building filled up quickly.
Neighbor right next to him might want it.
Yeah, for real, for sure, definitely, I can see that. Okay, we'll move on to new business item D, grant accounting and administration policy. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. So the policy in front of you is something that was denoted by the auditors when they did the audit this year, just on how we account for our grants, particularly our federal grants, because they have specific audit requirements and accounting standards. That being said, this policy will address that. It was prepared by our finance director, who's done this for a number of communities. Our specific policy would apply to grants, all grants over $10,000 or all federal grants. So for example, if we submit a grant at the library for $500 for something, it would not fall under this. So this would be substantial grants, most of which you see in advance before we apply, but this policy will put that in writing and then also provide the paperwork for the finance department to administer them and the auditors to review them. So we ask council for their approval for this new policy.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Dave?
Just a lot of loopholes always to jump through, seems like with these grants sometimes, but that's the way they're written.
For sure. Any questions, comments, guys and ladies? Motion to approve the new policy? Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Zeiser. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Stuchel to approve the grant accounting and administration policy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And we'll move on to item D, Dial-A-Ride Annual Funding Resolution. Dave.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Jake to come up because he is going to be our appointed as our transportation coordinator as part of this resolution. So,
Is that so? Is Jake gonna get a raise with those new responsibilities?
yes. No. I'm gonna shake, me shaking his hand. This is something that has been the DPS director's responsibility on the books for a while, but it had also been done by the finance department with Lonnie Tools here. So we're just putting it where it should be. I'll let Jake speak to the actual resolution.
Well, it was a tremendous amount of work putting it together, but we, with the help of Karen, our help in finance temporarily, we got it put together and it seems to make sense. We went ahead and used, you'll see the resolution here. It outlines the state operating assistance dollars, the federal operating assistance dollars, what we expect to match, and outline with our total expenses to create a balanced budget. And if you read through the agenda item summary, because of our offset budget years, things are a slight estimation, which why we note here at budget time you'll see something that's slightly different than this, but this is our best estimate right now. It is required to do this now and at this time because of our federal funding that we need to get on the books for. So we apply for it, allows the state to kind of lump it all together and go to the feds with it. So this is really what it looks like, and I guess I'm not sure what else to say about it other than probably to field questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, and this is something the council approves annually.
Yes, every year. Yep, you just, normally Bonnie would have brought it to you in years past.
Any questions for Jake?
I have one more thing I will point out. So the local match or the local funds, that's a combination of fares and also admin has not been removed from that yet, so that number will come down and put our local contribution back in that same range of that 50 to 60,000 number. Historically, does that sound right, Mr. Mackey? So once the admin and the fares come out of that, that gets us back pretty close to where we've been in the past. We did approve a union contract, with some raises for the drivers, so the labor's up slightly, from years past, not a tremendous amount, but that will be reflected here, so.
Thank you, Jake. Any questions for Jake? Appreciate you taking on another job. Motion to approve the resolution? Support. Motion on the floor from Councilman Stuchel, seconded by Councilman Briner. City Clerk, may I please have a roll call vote?
Councilperson Stuchel?
Yes.
Pratt? Yes. Sizer?
Yes.
Mayor Stockford?
Yes.
Councilperson Sola?
Yes.
Briner?
Yes.
Morrissey?
Yes.
And Sharp?
Yes.
8-0 all approved. It's resolution 3487.
3487.
Correct.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we will move into new business item F, which is industrial park development agreement. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. This actually was brought to us Thursday of last week from our Realtor, which is Christy Clemens Realty. And we have a developer who is offering to purchase all our remaining industrial park land, which is about 152 acres, according to the purchase agreement, which would total around 5,000 an acre, which would total for all the land for about $760,000. Minimal requirements. I'd say it's a pretty straightforward purchase agreement. The one thing that we would be negotiating or working with the purchaser on is typically we don't allow the land to be farmed for an extended period of time. He's not asking for an extended period of time, but why he is trying to develop it, get others to buy and develop it. He would like to farm it for income, pay the taxes. That is really the only stipulation that he wants to work out with the city. If you recall, we recently, last fall, we put the farming out to bid again. So we did sign a new contract with the current tenant that's farming it. This particular buyer is willing to work with him at least this year to get potentially plant crops or get crops out of the ground, and then it would be their responsibility to negotiate further. But what the good thing about this is, a couple of good things, I guess, is the city would recognize the revenue, the $760,000, of course. We would be putting it into private hands, whom would only be able to recoup and make money off of it.
Dave, you gotta hype this up. This is the biggest land deal ever in the history of the city of Hillsdale, and it's taking public land and putting it into private hands.
That's
It's
true.
exactly the direction we wanna go in. It's gonna be a huge revenue source for the city. It is going to double our tax revenue in the industrial park. It's a big deal, guys. It's huge.
But what is the purpose he plans to do with the land?
We don't care.
I'm curious.
There,
When we're selling land, I'd like to know what his plans are. You gonna put a marijuana farm there or what?
No, because that would be against our ordinances. That would be against our local ordinances. So he's not gonna have a casino there, he's not gonna have a strip club there, and he's not gonna have a marijuana facility there, or
Do you have any idea what his plans are down the road?
we do not know what his plans are, but they would have to fall within our planning and zoning guidelines, of course. So we still do have control over what's built there. We just wouldn't have all the financial investment in the land.
I just don't wanna kill the mayor's enthusiasm or selling the land. I think it's a great thing. I just wanna make sure we give him the key to the vault for what?
I get it. But you know, we don't wanna be,
We're
don't wanna be development.
Well,
We don't wanna be development
let's
for
not
ourselves
be
anymore. And we give it to some guy and we're selling it, we're getting.
We're not giving it to him.
No.
Yeah.
And
Paying a good price for it.
he is a traditional agricultural development real estate person. I talked to Christy about this, we've had meetings, and this isn't a fly-by-night guy. This is a guy that operates all over the state, and Dave's done an incredible job here. This is a big win for us to start out the new year. I was dancing around my kitchen when this first fell together, so this is great news.
And we did, I did speak with the Community Development Committee, which was Mr. Morrissey, Rob, Councilman Soha, and Councilman Zeiser about this in advance once we received it, because we had a short timeline on which to respond. And they were all in favor of getting into private hands, because, you know, it puts the burden on the private owner to develop it. And we can put, as part of this negotiation, you know, we can put, you know, we'll let you farm it for 5 years or 3 years, and I'm sure it would be pieces, because in order for them to make money, they've got to turn it over and sell it and build on it. So, I know the mayor's very excited about it, we're very excited about it, because this actually, with this piece here, it actually sells all our industrial park land, which is another whole discussion, but with Stoll's piece and this, we're putting it in private hands for.
Okay, the whole cake.
Couldn't talk them into buying 3 metals.
That's next, that's our next focus, for sure.
That'd be great. No, that's a good thing, Mr. Mayor, it really is. It's just, boom, here we go.
Yeah,
More money.
it was out of the
Yeah.
blue.
That's a good thing, though. Sometimes you gotta jump.
If there are any questions, I'll.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry. Sorry, Dave, you gotta sell this stuff to people, man. Let them, they gotta know exactly what is happening. Like, oh, the city's selling some farmland. No, this is a big deal.
Yep, and it has been reviewed by legal counsel, and we put in the clause that it had to be approved by council to consummate the agreement.
So moved. There you go.
Support.
Very good. Do it.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha to, sell this land to this gentleman. May I have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Pratt,
Yes.
Sizer,
Yes.
Mayor Stockford,
Yes.
Councilperson Soha,
Yes.
Reiner,
Yes.
Morrissey,
Yes?
Sharp,
Yes.
and Stuchel.
Yes.
8-0, all approved.
Thank you, Katie. Well, now we only have 4 goals left for the year, gentlemen.
Officially.
All right, we will move into miscellaneous reports, and due to the nature of the appointments, we will split the appointments into 2.
How about that?
We did that already, Yep. So the first appointment is to the TIFA board, Doug Ingalls, Commissioner Ingalls, as a representative of the county, which was a request from the county. And it seems that TIFA had a meeting this morning and have some concerns, and so we wanna definitely move forward with getting it all out in the open.
I just passed this resolution on, really there's kind of 2 issues with this. The first one we'll talk about Mary Wolfram and what she's done and removing from TIFA was, that's what this kind of addresses. Mary's been, a key player in all the projects we got going on in TIFA. She seeks out grants, she gets us grants, and she brought in millions of dollars in this community. And I believe the letter states to her, her term was up in July of '21, so we're, 6 months into this now. So what TIFA would like to do is keep Mary on board until the keeper is completed. We've got an outstanding working relationship with both private investors and with MEDC, all those working relationships. We just, as a TIFA board, we don't want to lose that knowledge and that skill set, especially when it comes to grant writing and finding those monies for us. So we don't want to lose that from the TIFA board. And the other issue is, it is not Mr. Ingalls. I mean, Mr. Ingalls has served as county commissioner, I believe he was mayor at one time. I mean, his public service is impeccable, there's no issue there. The question is, having a county commissioner on a TIFA board where the county commissioner can come to any meeting, if they would so choose, we can get them on the agenda, we can talk and discuss about it. The issue is coming down to a voting right. I mean, we feel that's a step too far, a bridge too far, maybe, is to have a board commissioner sitting on the board voting. Because we see a slight conflict of interest there. The monies that all come in through Tifa, when you stop to think about this, all those monies are spent in the county. They're spent in Tifa, but it's in the county of Hillsdale. So this protects Tifa, and we just wanna, that's the concern, is having a voting right on Tifa. And it's not Mr. Ingles, it's any county commissioner.
Okay,
That's where we're standing.
okay, I understand that. Any input from any other members of council? Councilman Zola.
So as I've been thinking about this since we first broached it last year, I would be inclined to agree with Councilman Stuchel. If Mrs. Wolfram and Mr. Bayash are willing to serve another term, I don't see why we wouldn't want to encourage you to appoint them. Mary's been invaluable in her service to the community, both when she was being paid and even these last few years where she has continued the endeavor as a, donating her time and her energies. And I think that's selfless and it's an asset to the community. I'm opposed to this.
Yeah, I definitely don't want you guys to think that I would ever take anything like this personally. So, Councilman Sharp?
Okay, my turn. It is your right to appoint whoever you choose, correct? With council's blessings.
With your guys' approval. That's my appointment powers, is
Right.
at your approval.
She also stated that there should be property owners in the Tifa district. We've had somebody on Tifa, up at Hillsdale College, who was on Tifa board. I think his name was Hunter.
Mike?
Yeah, Mike.
He wasn't,
No, and I believe, Ms. Brandon is his his replacement.
right, but we've had, so it isn't always necessary somebody that's got property in the Tifa district to be on there.
I didn't say that. I never
Well,
said that.
No, I'm the one that was saying that's what, he wasn't saying that as anything against you. What you were
No,
saying.
Chip has never said that. That's why I'm curious.
Well, my point is this, back a few years ago, when the council was told, we just bought the Dawn Theater through a gentleman that owned the Stocks Mill, Dawn Theater, Kiefer House, owned some business over in Jonesville, and he made a nice little profit off of it. That's his business, that's his right. But here all of a sudden, we got it, and that's when we said we need to get somebody from council on Tifa board, so we know what's going on. The same way with the airport committee. That's where I got put on, because we wanted eyes and ears on these committees, so we were aware of what was going on. This whole thing, when it came, council should have had, hey, this is what their plans are. So we would have had discussions saying yay or nay. All of a sudden, it was too late. That was my concern on that. And that's why we had you put on there, because you're our eyes and ears. We always want, now we have to have that, always have that protection out there to know what's going on. We don't want to be blindsided on something and all of a sudden we're owners of it. I mean, tonight, selling that land, that was a great thing. I mean, we jumped on it, we did it right. I don't have anything against Mary, I think she's done a great job. There's sometimes I feel that Mary can be a little pushy, but that's Mary, she gets jobs done that way. She gets it done. I also remember when she was on council, she was a council person, she was also the EPA director. Which I always wondered, how is that not a direct violation, because she was a city employee and also on the city council at the same time. Got a little confused on that matter, but I'm not gonna go there with that. It's whatever you guys decide to do, I will support. Whatever the council decides tonight. If they want her back on there, I don't have a problem.
Councilman Morrissey.
I have a question for the city attorney. Can the council reinstate Ms. Wolfram? Or is it exclusively an appointment of the mayor, and we either reject or accept the appointment?
Yes, it's the mayor's appointment, and it is subject to approval by the council, so you could reject it, and in which
But
case
we
the
can't
mayor
force the mayor to make an appointment of Ms. Wolfram. So basically what the issue is tonight, we immediate issue is whether or not we vote for Mr. Ingles, correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
and then if you were to reject Mr. Ingles, then the mayor.
And then the policy issue would be this issue about whether we want people on the Tifa board to be business owners in the Tifa district, which is a separate issue. It's a policy issue. We don't have to deal with that tonight.
I wish I would've came to the Tifa meeting this morning so I could've caught some of the, conversation, cause I heard from the, chairperson of Tifa, regarding this, about the way that the meeting unfolded. And Mary took the podium here tonight, and she feels like she's being singled out. I would say that Mary was singled out when she was appointed to Tifa. She's not being singled out because I'm not reappointing her. I wanted to appoint a different downtown property owner, and the Tifa board, actually, a member of the Tifa board resigned to make room for Mary to be appointed to the board. So at that point is when I feel that there was a singling out of a person to appoint them to the board. So Mary's on the board because I brought that appointment forward and you guys approved it. So the idea that I don't like her or people don't like her, that's ludicrous. It's silly. Working with committees is important to me, and compromise is important. And like I said, that's how Mary got on the board in the first place. Despite not being a downtown property owner or a brick and mortar business owner in the Tifa district or in the city at large, that was a compromise on my part. And you guys don't know this because I didn't make it public at the time because I didn't have any reason to, but there were several people at that time who wanted to be appointed to Tifa. Several people that were coming to me asking to be appointed to Tifa, who I turned down because they didn't own business in the downtown district. I'll tell you, one of them was Ted Jansen. Ted came to me and said, I want to serve on the Tifa board. I said, Ted, you don't own property downtown. I want to appoint downtown property owners to that board, because those are the people that have a vested interest in that board. And Ted was upset, but, and then I turned around and I appointed Mary because of pressure, which I can't stress enough that she's on the board because I brought that appointment forward. It was a compromise on my part. It was a compromise in itself of my ethics and my principles, and I did it so I could show certain people that I had respect for them and that I appreciated their input. Mary's term was up in July, and instead of appointing another business owner at that time in July, when I had several business owners at that time coming to me wanting to be appointed on Tifa, I didn't do the reappointment in July because the Tifa chair requested to me that Mary be allowed to stay on to see the completion of the Dawn, since she was the major driver of the Dawn project. And so there was another compromise where I compromised and I said, okay, I won't bring forth another appointment until the Dawn is completed. They said, won't be any later than late November, early December. Here we are, January, and I'm trying to move forward with an appointment that I want, that the county asked me for personally. But this is what I'm saying, there's another compromise. And I've got no credit for any of these compromises. No, thank you, Mayor Stockford, for going against your principle, to placate people, to help push forward a project, which you were told, in fact promised, that would never see a dime of money from the city of Hillsdale. That none of our funds would ever go towards it. Which we were told we were never going to own it. That the city of Hillsdale, when it was purchased, the city of Hillsdale was not going to own it. We were going to buy it. We were going to sell it to private investors immediately. This is before your time on Tifa, Greg. And then, you guys have to own it.
Yep.
But it's just going to be for a couple years.
Yep.
And then, sorry, you guys have to own it, and we need some of your money, and we're gonna have it for the rest of your natural life. And if it becomes another Three Meadows or another Mitchell building, then your kids can figure it out.
Yep.
And it stinks because I do love the Dawn, and I love the hard work of the people who have moved the project forward, and I wanna see it succeed with every fiber of my being. And if I express apprehension about all this, it's not because I'm being an obstructionist, it's because I worry. That's what I do. And it's because I know our history, I study history, and I know that we've been here before. And I also know that every single thing that we've been told about this project has turned out to be something different than what it is.
Yeah.
So, I will say, it was brought up at the Tifa meeting that the board would like to have a vetting process on appointments. The appointment process for boards is in our charter, and the Tifa appointment process is a state law. Now remember that Tifa is very unique. It is a very unique board, even amongst all of our boards, because it's a board of unelected people who are spending substantial amounts of our tax dollars. And when they wrote the law, they were aware that there was this glaring contradiction, and there was some pushback. And that pushback in Michigan to the Tifa law actually came from people at Hillsdale College, many of them. And so to give, I guess, the people some say over the use of those tax dollars, they made the appointment process go through boards of elected people like us, like city councils. So I don't want to remove those checks and balances from the process. I will not say that I haven't made appointments that it's not just me, they're my appointments and they're your guys' decision. I make the appointments, you guys make the decision. I'm not gonna say that there hasn't been appointments that I've made that I don't regret, because there are a couple appointments that I made that I regret making. I understand why the board would be apprehensive about the appointment of a commissioner, because I remember when I appointed Councilman Stuchel, the board did not want a council member on the board and tried to cook up 1,000 different ways why I couldn't appoint a council member to the board. If I know I have not tried to hide the fact that Doug's my stepfather, if people are apprehensive about that, then there's Commissioner Leininger, who is also a business owner and who owns property in the Tifa district. He's got this farm bureau right back here. He's in the Tifa district, he's a commissioner. So if it's about Doug being my stepfather, then Commissioner Leininger fits the criteria for appointment to Tifa in every way, shape, and fashion.
Mr. Mayor, right there, it's not Mr. Ingles, okay, it is not. It is a county commissioner, and I guess the question is.
Okay.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like,
yeah.
Why don't we call the governor to have her appoint somebody to sit on this council? Where do these oversights stop? You know, we have a city board, we're overseen by the city council. Why do we need to be overseen by the county? Then why not by the state? I mean, I guess.
No, I've had people express this.
I mean, that's the concern. I mean, that's.
Concern to me.
Because, you know, the White House right now wants to have the federal take over state voting rights, right? Well, this is kind of like the county wants to help take over our city voting rights in a sense. I mean, it's very, you know, maybe a poor example. The issue is voting, because there's nothing that the city or the county commissioners cannot bring to TIFA to have a special. It's the voting right is the issue.
Yeah, and you know, Litchfield is appointing a commissioner to their TIFA, Reading's appointing a commissioner to their TIFA. That doesn't mean Hillsdale has to do it. We don't have to appoint a commissioner to our TIFA board. I understand why they would want one, at least in the sense of the city of Hillsdale, which makes it unique amongst those other two appointments. The county actually does own property in the city, in the Tifa district. Actually, they're the biggest property owner in the Tifa district. So I understand why the county would want representation. Probably zero. Probably zero.
So
yeah. Yep. I understand that. I'm Councilman Morrissey.
Well, as I say, the issue is whether we're going to appoint Mr. Ingles. Obviously, if the mayor is not going to appoint Ms. Wolfram, then we can either say yes or no to his appointment, or we can send it back for him to tap into some of the people who actually do have business interests in the Tifa district. Those seem to me to be our choices.
That's the brass tacks of it. But what Tifa wanted was to specifically tell me that they want this person appointed. And, You know, I
Well, there.
have reappointed every single person that they brought forth, back forth for reappointment. And I went through this with BPU too. We went through this with BPU, that we follow every one of their recommendations, and then when we decide to reject one recommendation from BPU, they just spin out, and they're like, you don't trust us, you don't have faith in us. It's like, we approve 99% of what you guys do. Why, we're the elected officials, we're the people that are representing the, okay, I'm getting off track. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying that we have to rubber stamp what Tifa wants. What I'm saying is simply that if there's opposition on the basis of not having a commissioner on the Tifa board, we can reject Mr. Ingles' application.
That's your guys' decision.
Right, exactly, and then ask you to put forth a new member, presumably someone who, we could do an advisory saying that, we could have someone who has business interests in the Tifa district. If that was your, if you could select someone, but we can't tell you to vote, to appoint anyone in particular. That's your choice, you're the mayor. So, that's what I'm saying.
I'm very well aware of the dynamics.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman Morrissey.
So,
So do you, yes, sir.
I did have two other Tifa members call me today and voice their support of reappointments as what has been in the past for all, both Mary and Chris. So just wanted, I was meant to mention that earlier.
Yeah, and I had Tifa members reach out to me today too, for the same purpose. Two of them, like you said, probably same people. Councilman Brennan.
Yeah, so I had Tifa members reach out to me also. My thought on it, which is, it's my thought only, it's nobody else's. You know, Mary has done a wonderful job on the Tifa board. She's done an excellent job with the Dawn and the Kiefer Hotel project. My thought on it is, if Tifa didn't go in and buy those two properties, honestly, we probably would have took the money out of the city budget to tear those properties down. She was able to go get grants, rehab those properties and keep them upright, where we might have a hole kind of similar to 2325 North Broad Street. You know, those buildings needed attention desperately. Tifa saw that, had the funds to purchase them from the private investor, and saw a vision. And Mary was kind of the driving force behind that vision, from my understanding. And, you know, for us to not, you know, get her opinion on if she wants to be reappointed or not, doesn't really set well with me. Again, it's nothing against Doug Ingles. Doug does a wonderful job at the county level, but you know, with these appointments, normally we go back to the individuals and ask them if they would like to be reappointed. And with Mary's experience in Tifa, in the projects and what she's brought to the downtown area, you know, I would feel a little bit slighted if I was her, if we didn't come back to her and say, would you like to be reappointed? That's just my thought, you know, I know it's probably not popular with everybody, but that's my personal opinion. So, you know, and that's, you know, maybe somebody doesn't want to be reappointed later on down the road, where we could put a commissioner on there. I don't have a problem with that either, having a commissioner on there. The only thing that you may run into is if they were pressing to dissolve, because then you could move those funds to go towards something else instead of our Tifa district in the city of Hillsdale.
Council would have to dissolve Tifa. Tifa can't dissolve itself.
They can make a recommendation. So if there's enough people that listen to that certain council or that certain commissioner, and then we're not always going to be on council. So I mean, 5-10 years down the road, we could have a different council, mayor, commissioner could be on the board, sway the vote. We want to dissolve Tifa. You know, that's, what do we think? You know, maybe 5-10 years, that's what we want to do. But right now, I don't think so. I think we want to continue to focus downtown and growing and keeping businesses coming. My opinion.
No, I wanna hear your opinion, and I don't, trying to work with the county. If you guys wanna tell them to kiss off, then that's what we'll do, you know? That's fine, but not gonna be strong-armed into appointing anybody. This wasn't meant to be something personal. I picked the, you know, I didn't say anything about not reappointing Chris Bayhash. I just picked the one person who was up for reappointment, who didn't own property downtown or businesses downtown, so.
Well, Chris owns yours.
I know, that's why I said, I never said anything about
Oh, I thought you said
reappointing
you did. I'm
Chris
sorry, I
Bayhash.
misunderstood you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I recognize Mary's talent. There's a place for her in city government. If she wants to keep serving, I'll find some place for her. I'll point her to another board. There's planning, ZBA, airport board, they all have appointments coming up. Various other boards where appointments are needed on the horizon. And there's subcommittees on TIFA that don't need approval of council to make appointments to them. So, but we can talk about all that moving forward. Right now, it sounds like there's enough apprehension on the board to not appoint a commissioner that, do you guys wanna try the appointment and just see where the numbers fall, or do you guys just wanna pull it from the agenda? I am fine with either one.
I just didn't pull it.
Yeah, table it.
Okay. Motion on the floor from Councilman Stuchel, seconded by Councilman Morrissey, to pull the TIFA appointment from the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Second appointment is to the library board, Josh Palladino. This was a recommendation from the library board to appoint Josh. So, did you have a question?
Just for the library board, because the
Yeah, that's just the same.
board says review, election commission, TIFA.
So Josh is already on the board review.
Okay.
We've already appointed him to one board, and the library board,
I thought his name was familiar.
yes, yeah. He's a young guy that's in the grad program at Hillsdale College, and he's looking to get more involved in the city government.
He's been here before, he's spoken.
Yeah.
Seems like a capable guy.
Yeah, he is, and he wanted to serve on the library board, and the library board brought him forth as a recommendation, and said, we'd like to have Josh on the library board, so I said, all right. So do I have a motion to appoint Josh Palladino to the library board?
So moved.
Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, we'll move into general public comment. During this time, the podium will be open. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Please limit your trips to the podium. And during this time, you may speak on anything your heart so desires. Podium's now open.
I think if you got a business owner in the Tifa district, it doesn't matter if he's Catholic or Baptist, or elected to some position, then that's a good choice to nominate for your Tifa district. I mean, he fits all the qualifications. What he does on the side or what kind of hobbies he has has got nothing to do with it whatsoever. And I think that whatever his name was, Leninger or whatever, that's the person that should get appointed. I mean, you don't have any other applications. The only application you got is Doug Engels. So nobody else has filed an application. So I think that would be a great appointment. I mean, like I said, he meets all the criteria, right down to the last little letter, so. And this is more directed to Dave. We talked this morning. Does that get rid of everything out there?
Yes.
Okay, so my deal's out the window on that too then. Okay, okay. I think it was a good idea to table it, I really do. I know there was a lot of discussion about it, but, you know, there are guidelines for TIFA, it's just like, and I say this, like, they had their informational hearing, which I've contacted the state to find out what that really says. In the website that the city has, it says that they're supposed to give their goals and et cetera, and their progress and everything, which at the last TIFA meeting, the last public hearing, I was the only one there other than the TIFA board, which wasn't even a quorum then. I don't know, I know they consider that a informational meeting, but I don't think it is. And they've had another meeting where they didn't have a quorum, that they didn't really have anything to say either. So I'm talking to the state to actually find out what is an informational meeting. I know it went for 2 years, and I don't know if somebody just didn't look it over or what. They didn't even have any informational meetings for some reason. I guess they just, and I know there's people on the TIFA board that are experts in the TIFA that should have known that they should have had hearings, which they did, or informational meetings. So, I'm glad the Dawn's open, or will be open. I thought the TIFA district should have been the one that did the open house and not a nonprofit company off the side or business or whatever, you know, corporation. I thought, I've looked through the Dawn Theater thing, and I know they're gonna get $500 a month for like 2 years, and then it goes up like $100. I don't see how that thing's ever gonna pay TIFA anything, which is not gonna profit or to help the people in TIFA that need the help on their buildings and stuff or whatever. It's not gonna help them a bit. I mean, it's gonna bring people in, but TIFA's never gonna have the extra cash to do their grant things that they propose to do at $500 a month. I also have another, I got a question. There's a question on October 4th. There was said that Heritage Association had got a $15,000 grant. It was through the help of Mary that was gonna be used to help finish off the stenciling work. But I don't see that money anyplace. I don't know if it's a misspeak of somebody or what. I know it's been blamed on Katie for not taking the actual, the way it was said, but I would like to know which is true and what's not there. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Any more public comment?
I find it interesting that Tifa came up with a resolution today about this appointment, and I looked at the agenda last night to see if I was gonna go, and there was nothing on the agenda for that business, or I would have come this morning.
Thanks, Penny. Any more general public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the podium and move into the city manager's report. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things to point out. I want to make mention to everyone about the New Year's Eve event. By estimation, there was approximately 1,500 in attendance that night, which was a huge amount. And I want to thank the folks who worked on that, Chief Hefner, Kelly Lepresto, and others, as well as the Elks Club, and for putting on that event, as well as the Community Foundation, as they kicked in a large share of the money that went to funding that. Just to remind everyone, we had an skating rink, large tube slide, horse and carriage rides, face painting, character drawings, beverages, and my understanding is all the lines are full continually all night for the most part. For 1,500 people, that's a tremendous event. So just want to thank everyone involved with that event. Also, EDC, did their gift card program this year. Just some stats on that, so everyone knows the benefit of this. There were 39 businesses, local businesses that participated in that. So what the program was is if you purchased a $25 gift card during this time, EDC would kick in another $10, so you'd get a $35 gift card. They sold during this time 888 gift cards, so EDC put $8,880 into the program. And if you do the math, with the initial $25, it comes to over $31,000 that went into our local economy. So I would consider that a huge success. And EDC is very excited about continuing this program as they move forward. Want to mention that on January 26th at 6 p.m. there is an ONG committee meeting. They're going to be discussing the sanctuary city for the unborn ordinance. They received their questions back from City Attorney Thompson, and I believe the committee is going to discuss it at that time. In front of you, I also put a transportation asset management flyer for local officials. There's a link there that you can log on to if you're interested in learning some more about asset management on roads as we continue our road projects. This is a good, the city engineer recommended you guys to consider that. The library just decided here today, and this is out on social media at this point, and Facebook, that for the next 2 weeks they're going to go to curbside pickup only. They've had a number of folks come down with COVID, and there's limited staff at the library, so this is on Facebook and social media and the website, so anyone who is interested in library services over the next couple of weeks should check that out. Received a notice that Junior Achievement of Hillsdale County is looking for bowling team sponsors. Their Crazy Bowl is February 19th. So if anyone is interested in sponsoring a team or learning more about that, if you want to reach out to me, I've got the flyer. I'll have Katie actually added to the agenda as it slipped through and didn't make it in this under communications here. The last thing, just want to mention, the city will be kicking off its New Year budget process here on January 27th with the department heads and the finance director. And then that will lead to, on April 4th, the council getting presented with the proposed budget, which will include many, if not all, the ideas that we have on our goals for the year. Like, for example, the sound system, the property sales. We'll do our best to include those. The school resource officer will have to work on that. The Mitchell building, that'll be a discussion. And roads, we've already talked about some of our projects moving forward. So we'll build our budget around this and do our best to incorporate them. And then once we present it to you on April 4th, then we have time to go through it and tweak it, change it, look at things that could be brought up. So with that, Mayor, I'll take any questions. And one last thing, just let you talk about one of our goals being selling property. The city does, outside of the industrial park, we do have a fair amount of land and lots we inherited over the years. So the assessing department has actually put together a book of the properties we own. Some of them we need, many of them we don't. So that will be part of that goal. I can envision actually trying to auction those properties off to get them on the tax rolls that we can. And also, if we are able to close on these 2 sales, then we can focus on our intentions on 3 Meadows and how we finish that project out. So there are some very good things on the horizon with economic development and, property that we have.
Awesome. Questions for Dave? Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dave. We'll move into council comment. Anybody have anything interesting? Councilman Morrissey.
Hi, yes, the Operations and Governance Committee will be meeting on the issue of the sanctuary city. I believe this coming Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
I'm sorry, I meant next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, next week, next Wednesday. And it would be at 6 o'clock, as I recall, 6 p.m. here at the council chambers. I just wanted to mention that because there was considerable interest in it when we had our meeting back in August of the ONG committee. Mr. Thompson has very kindly provided thorough answers to the questions that we raised and addressed to him in that meeting. Took a little bit of time to do the research and think it through, and we appreciate his efforts on that. We will be having that public hearing, and then after assuming it's just one meeting, we'll have a recommendation for council on that, coming out of that meeting. So as early as our next meeting, conceivably, our next council meeting, we might have a recommendation.
Thank you, Councilman Morrissey and ONG committee. Any more council comment?
Bruce, tell me about Westwood Street. Are the houses gone?
Started.
Been down there, beautiful empty lots, yes, they look very nice. Mr. Mayor, I want to say I really respect what you did tonight, how you handled yourself, very professional. I mean, this is a very touchy subject for you, and you stepped up, and you were very professional in how you addressed it, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman Sharp. I appreciate your kind words. Dave, the New Year's party was awesome. Yep, very cool.
Nothing but good comments about it.
Yep. And thank you, Chief, and thank you, Kelly. I saw them both out there. Chief was outside freezing his mom's out, watching the kids ice skate, and it was just a lovely evening. The weather was, you couldn't ask for anything better on December 31st. So, Councilman Soha?
Yeah, I just, with all the lawsuits that we've had recently, excuse me, with the not-for-profits, and the assessments of those properties, I was wondering if we might just consider at our level, in the future, what the city's, how the city approaches assessing properties that have traditionally been not-for-profit, and maybe some, I don't know if the process needs to be honed or changed or anything, just to try to avoid getting into another scenario where we get sued because the person that we assessed, try to come to an amicable, I believe we tried this in these previous lawsuits, but just to try to avoid it from happening in the future, because I know it's costing us a considerable amount of money to defend ourselves. So.
It's good. Sentiments, Councilman Soha.
Which board would, or which committee would,
I guess, God, I can't think of anybody but ONG that would handle something like that.
If I may, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, as far as the assessing guidelines, those are established at the state level. The city does not have.
It's by statute.
Yes.
So it's part of the general property tax act and also the Michigan Tax Tribunal Act. Those are the two statutes. General Property Tax Act talks about if you want an exemption, what the criteria are for determining that. And then the procedure is, if you are not given the exemption, you can file a petition before the Board of Review and ask to have that exemption granted in front of the Board of Review. And the Board of Review considers whatever you present, and then they vote whether or not to grant that. If they deny it, then it goes to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. The lawsuit that we had, which was dismissed this past Monday by the circuit court on our motion, that suit should have been filed in the first place because the circuit court has no jurisdiction. It's entirely with the tax tribunal. So you have several steps where you can present the evidence as to why you should get the exemption if the city, through the assessor and the board of review, didn't agree that they thought that you met the criteria. Then you go to the tax tribunal, and the tax tribunal will determine whether or not they agree with the city or they agree with the taxpayer. But that's the process, so there's really not anything the council can do to change that. That's a state law process.
Fair.
And this last year, we just kind of had the perfect storm of bad circumstances and scenarios that unfolded because of COVID and then because of absences on the board of review. We had a 2-person board of review. Literally that board's 5 people, 3 members, 2 alternates, and everybody called off except for 1 member and our second alternate. And so what that does is sets up not a very democratic way to handle it, because when you want to pass a motion or approve something, you have to have a majority vote. So when you've got 2 people, a majority vote is both members. 1 member votes against it, that's 50%. For one way or the other, that's not a majority vote. So unfortunately, because of COVID and because of absences on the board of review, we really haven't. I don't know if we could have avoided it unless we could have gotten people to show up for the board of review meetings, or it really was, it's unfortunate how those couple things unfolded. So hopefully, I don't know, Murphy's Law, something can't go wrong, it does go wrong, I guess, I don't know.
From my complete understanding, it's the city's submitting to the state's requirements.
Yes, because it involves tax money, and whether or not you're gonna exempt someone from having to pay property taxes, there's a state law that governs the criteria for determining that. And then it's up to the cities, or first the assessor. If the assessor did not exempt it, then it's up to the board of review if the taxpayer wants the board of review to consider it. So they bring it in front of the board of review, which meets each year. And the board of review makes a determination whether or not they think you're entitled to the exemption. And if they don't, then you can appeal it as the taxpayer to the tax tribunal. And they're the ultimate authority. They'll make the final decision on it. But that process is to make sure that primarily you don't have situations where somebody gets exempted from the property taxes, or maybe they shouldn't because they're buddies with somebody in the administration or something like that. That's why it's set up to have that 3-person board review, and you have to have at least 2 of the 3 agree that you're entitled to the exemption again, if it was not given to you in the first place.
And there's also always the state to defer to or to
Yes.
appeal to. I mean.
You actually appeal it to the tax tribunal. They have a proceeding, it's much like a trial. In fact, it is. It's just an administrative version of that. And there's an administrative law judge who will hear all the evidence and make a determination. Most of the time, but not all of the time, that's usually the stage where you can reach a settlement agreement with the taxpayer. I used to represent a lot of industrial companies who had issues with their personal property tax assessments, and that's typically where you work out a deal with the township or the city, would be at that stage. Sometimes you can't do that, and in that case, then the administrative law judge makes a determination.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Sola. Any more council comment? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Soha to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.